Hello and welcome. This is a continuation of our networking series. In this video, I'm going to show you how to configure authentication on a Cisco router. We have this network schematic or diagram, and I have a user that's called NOC admin or Network Operations Center admin. That user comes to the office and then manages all the routers, all the switches, the wireless controllers. But for this scenario, we're going to configure this router, router 1, and that router and this one for users to log in with their username and password. And for the first one, I'm going to show you Radius. So, and I've got a server here, Radius and TACACS. And if I open the Radius server, and in the services, you have AAA, Authentication, Authorization, and Auditing. This is disabled first. We need to enable it. And then you can change the port, or you can use the default port. And then the devices that want to authenticate with this, let's say the first one here, router 1, we've got some IPs, one facing there, which is 10.2.2.1, or maybe the fast Ethernet has got multiple IP addresses. And we need to check what route is there that can reach the authentication server. Every route, there's OSPF across, and every route is available, they can reach that destination. So I need to provide the router name first of all, that's called router 1. And it is IP, I can use one of its interfaces, 10.2.2.1, and then the secret key, let's use a simple one like Cisco. And when I do that, I can add, and if you have other devices you want to authenticate from that Radius server, you can add them in this list. So this server is up, it's working. The next thing to do is to check its IP. So we need to provide an IP, and the subnet here is VLAN 3. So I'm going to give 10.3.3. Let's say 200, and the subnet mask is going to be /24, so 255.255.0. The default gateway is that router, which is 10.3.3.1. So I'm going to provide that one, 10.3.3.1. There is a DNS server which I'm using, which is over here as well, and I'm going to provide 20.1.1.100. So this server now has its IP, has the service which is the Radius AAA, which is enabled, and router 1 is configured to be able to authenticate users from there. So now the next thing we need to do is what user we will need to authenticate. Let's call it admin 1, and the password, let's give it Cisco, and then add, maybe there's admin 2 and admin 2, and this user also has the same password. Of course, when you're doing production environments, you create your own security more stricter. This is just a lab to show you and how to deploy, how to configure Radius. So now we have two users, admin 1, admin 2. They are both for that router. When we want to log in, they come and authenticate with the Radius server, which is here. So this is in place. And remember that key, if you want to change, you can do that. So now we go to the router and prepare it for authentication. But remember to have a backup login, and that means you need to have a database inside the router, some users you can use. For example, if you lose connectivity to your Radius server and that router cannot reach whatever reason, then you won't be able to access. So you should have like a backdoor, a local user in the router that you can use to access it. So let's create that one first. We call it conft, and let's call it super user. So username, super user, and then we can create a password for that. So let's call super user, and the password, let's give it secret, and just simple password. That one, I'm going to use it as a backdoor, or maybe a backup username or backup login. But the ones we need to authenticate from the data from the Radius server, that we don't want to configure them inside the router. We just tell router, if you ever need to authenticate those users, go to the Radius server, and the Radius server will confirm their identity and then allow their login. So we need to first of all do the Radius configuration. So let's say Radius server, and then we give the Radius dash server. Radius server, it's not completing. Okay, Radius server, and then host, and then we provide one before we do that, we need to actually configure the AAA authentication. So we call AAA new model, and then we call AAA authentication. We need to authenticate using AAA model, login, and here a lot of people forget the default authentication list. You have to write default, and then you provide, for example, a radius. So you add a group. If it's radius or TACACS, you say group, and then you provide radius and local. If that doesn't work, jump to the local. If the radius is not working, then use the local one. So that's now in place. The next thing we need to do is configure the radius server. So radius server, and then provide the IP for that radius server, which was 10.3.3.200, I think we configured. That's it. And then the pass key we configured was, if we say radius server, and then we provide the key, it was Cisco. And then we exit. Before we exit, we go to Align Console, and we say anything coming to connect to the console, we need to authenticate them. So login, instead of login local, we say login authentication, and you use the profile you created, which is the default. So end, and then save it. Now that router, if we say show run, if we say that, then you have the authentication in place. So if you go back, the other configurations in place. We have super user as a backdoor, and then we have the AA new model in place, and we are using radius server. And the radius server configurations are here. And then you need to key, you have to, of course, encrypt those. Okay, now let's try to log in to the router. So here, let's exit first. Okay, now let's try to connect using admin1, which we have in the radius server, and then provide the password. Now we log in, and then we have enable, and then we say conft if we want to change anything. There you go. So we logged in, and if you say exit, show users, we have admin1, which is connected to the console. If you want to connect from a PC, then you have to enable the line VTY. So we can say conft line VTY, maybe the first 5, and then we create, same as we did for the console, we say login authentication, and then you create default. Now if you exit and save, if we exit, now let's go to this PC, and if we go to desktop, command prompt, telnet, you can say SSH if you enable SSH. Now provide the IP for that router. Let's say 10.2.2.1. That's one of the interfaces. And now it says that is open, and we provide admin2, for example, because these are available, and the password. So we log in. If we now go back to the other shell we had from the router itself, admin1, and then provide the password, enable show users. Now we have 2 users, one connected from that IP. So that's the IP of that PC. If we check this PC, it is, yes, the IP. So if we hover over, otherwise we need to close this window. Anyway, you have those 2 users now connected, one from the console, you see from console, one from the VT line from that IP address. Then you can limit how many users can connect. At the moment we said login VTY 0 to 4, that's 5 users can connect. Or maybe you can just say 0, 1, 1 user can connect. 2 users, I mean 0 is a number and then 1 is a number. That means we configured this router's access based on radius. If the radius is gone, we don't have connectivity, then we have the backup user. I'll show you in the other video how to configure TACACS. Thank you for your time, and see you in another video.